Welcome to Gardening with Daddy Pete. Let's join our host, Melvin York.
We're going to talk just a little bit about compost. Even though we make a lot of compost, sell a lot of compost, we do have a lot of our home gardeners that would love to learn to make compost and are already making compost or trying to make compost. So I thought I'd go over just a few quick things and give you a few tips, because winter time's here, or almost here. We're here almost to December 1. This will be a good time to go ahead and get those compost bins starting and then use it for late spring, early summer plantings. Compost does tend to make a little slower as the temperatures get cooler. You do want to keep a good check on the heat and the moisture, and that's some of the things we're going to talk about. Also adding different nitrogens. So if you're a home gardener, you'd like to make some compost to add with the compost that you buy from your garden centers or your local nurseries, then you can also make some, and that helps when you do put both together and gives you a good free source to get rid of some leaves and all. This is a good time of year to start that compost bin. 4 things are usually needed, just basics to do a good compost pile. And you need your browns and your greens, and you'll do that in the summer more than now. And then you'll need the right amount of moisture or water, and then air or oxygen. So these are the 4 main things that you're going to need to do your composting. Now, browns this time of year is going to be easy to get a hold of. Leaves, small sticks, that's good. Some of the dead plants that you have, as long as you know they have not been diseased, will make a good compost additive. You want to make sure that when you do your compost bin, or if you're using a tumbler, in the bin top, you want to get as high as possible, because that's where you're going to get your most heat. It's not going to heat or really come together and start working well. In a small 1-foot pile, you need it up 2 to 3 feet at least, and make a pile. One thing I'd also recommend that you do would be to buy a compost thermometer. They're not that expensive. Usually they need to go up to like at least 200 degrees. Compost, when you do stick it, it'll be a long probe on it. You want to go to the center part of your pile to make sure what the temperatures are. I recommend that you do not turn that pile till you get at least 135 degrees. And then that way, if it has not brought itself up to 135 degrees, like in 10, 12 days, unless it's extremely cold and damp, I would then go ahead and aerate that pile anyway, maybe add a little bit more browns to it on the coarser, like some more sticks, maybe some straw, because you may not have enough oxygen going in the pile. So keep in mind, we've got plenty of browns this time of year. We've got very little greens. So the way to kick this compost pile off, your compost bin off, good way would be to buy some of Daddy Pete's composted dairy manure, or you could buy our composted kicking chicken, which is a blend of both the cow manure and also the chicken, or our mushroom compost. Either one of those 3 will give you a good quick start and a charge on that compost pile that you're starting out. Make sure that your moisture, you're not too wet. About 60%, 65% moisture is all you want. And believe me, when you're feeling that, that could be when you lift it up and your hand gets just a little damp. That's going to be about right. You don't want to see water running out of anything. If you grab it, mash it. If you've got water coming out, it's way, way too wet. So again, you'll need to add dries to that, whether it be browns or greens, to make sure that you get that right moisture so that you can get optimal heat and optimal growth for your bacteria. Now, I'm going to give you some other sources of things. Like I said, you can add to the nitrogen, because nitrogen does help the growth of the bacteria and they feed off of it. So again, manure, if you do have animals with manure, you can add that in there. But the composted manure is already ready to go. You're ready to get on with it and go, and it makes a great starter. If you're in the summertime, grass clippings is an excellent way of doing that. The green grass clippings, as long as the grass clippings has not been treated with any broadleaf weed killers and insecticides of that or herbicides of that type. When you put in, you want to keep your compost pure as you can. If you have such things as over the week, and you can actually maybe put these in a seal-like container or bucket, but coffee grounds. Buy the coffee filters that are biodegradable and pure. They've got them like the brown paper ones. That works good. Put those in your compost pile. Egg shells is a great one. Adds calcium. I would recommend that you do wash out the egg shells before you put them in your compost pile. That way that you don't attract certain different animals into your compost pile that's digging and rooting because of the smell. Fruit is another good one. Do not use citrus, but apples, if you have those, some older berries, strawberries, this one away, banana peels, good for potassium. All those work good in your compost pile and also does start adding nitrogen. Feather meal is a good one. Alfalfa meal is good. Fish emulsion, you can put that on there if you've got a source of that. Blood meal is another one that would work. So that just kind of gives you an idea of some of the things that you can add for nitrogen. And again, you can use a nitrogen straight from the store, like a 3400, and to go sparingly with it. But anything that keeps that source going is what you want to do. Now, compost again, you want to take that temperature, you want to set it 130, 35 degrees, 140, 150. You can start turning one time, putting airspace in there and keep a check on the temperature. I don't like to see it go over 155 to 160 degrees for the simple reason anything past 170 degrees, you will start killing beneficial microbes. And what we're wanting to do is keep the good ones. We're killing all the bad stuff out past 130, 35, 40, when we're really getting rid of all, if there was such a thing and it lived that long, after that heat would be your E. coli, you'd be getting rid of grass seed, weed seed, anything there, so you're actually producing a good, pure compost to use for your plants. Now, leaves is a good source of carbon, which is the browns, and greens is what you're looking for the nitrogens. You always want at least 2 browns to 1 green, and that usually works well if you're using like grass clippings, leaves, sticks, dried, dead stems, plants. Another good one to use, if you have any straw, I don't recommend hay, but if you do have any straw is good to add to the compost pile. It helps to aerate it and keep it going, and it breaks down well. So that's just some of the things that you can do now. And I know that here it is, 1st of December, and we've got the holidays coming, and I do understand that. But also, when you're gardening, you're always thinking ahead. And this time, we're planning making our soil, which basically will have nothing in or very little in it, that'll be ready for the later spring planting and summer. Now, depending on how well of a heat you get, it could be ready for the early spring planting. But you want to make sure that you go through and turn at least 5 times over that 135 or 40 degrees, at least that many times, at least 5. And that way, you make sure that you've got everything that wasn't in the center that was that temperature. Your outer layers are not going to be that hot. You want to make sure you get them turned in, and that way the whole pile will at least go through that type of heat for several times. Well, I hope that's helped you. And again, we've talked about compost before, but I did want to add those few extra things to there. You can go to our website, which is daddypete's.com, and you can look on our podcast there. You can find this one and other ones. It's an archive. If you'd like to go and listen to it again, if you happen to be driving or in a place where you can't get to it, you can always go there and find it. Also, there's a place there that you could ask a question, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. We get our questions. A lot of these podcasts are done solely off of the questions that's been asked us, and we try to answer them there. If you leave a question, it will get answered one way or the other, whether it's on the podcast, but I try to answer every one of them directly back to you yourself also. Look at our products while you're on our webpage. You'll find our compost that I'm talking about that you could use as a good compost starter and keep your compost beefed and built up. Add to along as you go, and that's our composted dairy cow manure. Totally different from beef and feedlot cow manure. This is dairy cow manure. Check out our kicking chicken, which is a blend of kicking chicken and our cow manure mixed together, so it doesn't burn, but yet gives you that higher nitrogen content than our mushroom compost, which also is a good nitrogen source, either one of those. Now, if you're short on browns and you need something to add to them, look at our soil enhancer. That is our aged pine bark pines. Now, that gives a lot of aeration to your soil, gives it a way to break down. And to be perfectly honest, you want to bring the heat up in your compost pile. In the wintertime, that would be a good one to do that. Mix some of those in. It's going to let the air flow a little more. With that extra nitrogen, you should have some compost cooking right off the bat. But remember the things that I told you, things that you have in your house that you use every day and mostly throw away. Coffee grounds, take them out of the pot, put them in your compost bin. Your fruit, I would not put the citrus fruits in there, but when I'm talking fruit, yes, you can still put tomatoes, yes, bananas, apples, pears, but you can also vegetables. As far as if you have squash, zucchini, the greens off of fresh radishes that you buy, all that can go into your compost pile, and that does add as nitrogen too. Well, again, it's around the 1st of December, and we've got some other things to talk about in the upcoming weeks. And I know we're all getting ready for Christmas, so we'll hold you no longer today. I do certainly appreciate each and every one of you that do call in or write in, leave us a message, and for all of you that's been so loyal and faithful. And thank you for sharing with your friends and neighbors, because again, we've had comments on that also. But again, remember the website, which is daddypete's.com. You can find that and look at our products. We've been hanging around since 1907. We're a century plus farm here in North Carolina, in the Piedmont of North Carolina. And there's quite a bit of information about that I think that you might find interesting. Farmhouse is still in operation today as a home for one of the 5th generation, and his 6th generation family also living there in the house, and is still on the place in the same spot. So we've been around. People talk about how that we want everybody to be good stewards of the land, and how they talk. Farmers have to be good stewards of the land, or we would be around here since 1907. And to keep in mind, and I want to thank all the farmers that's feeding the world, the long hours, and for the thankless jobs that they do. So I want to take a time for myself to personally thank you. Well, until next time, I've enjoyed it. You've been listening to Gardening with Daddy Pete. I was your host, Melvin York.
Thank you for joining today's Gardening with Daddy Pete. You can check out our website at daddypetes.com for additional gardening tips, and our podcast at gardeningwithdaddypete.podbean.com. You can also join us on Amazon, Apple, or Spotify.